Hello, hello. Hi. If you're new here, I'm Jade. And I mean, technically, you should all be new here because this is my new channel. For those of you that do know me, it's probably because you have come from my other channel. Um, just a quick backstory. I just kind of want to do the video, but just to say that for those of you that are new here and are like, well, why have you got a new channel? My old channel is mainly to do with just like random vlogs and fashion. And honestly, books are a huge part of my life. I've tried making a couple of videos on them before on my other channel, but it just doesn't really go down well. I feel like the audiences are very different, and that's fine. But I really want people that I can discuss books with and enjoy everything books because I love watching booktubers and book talk and everything like that. And I definitely prefer YouTube as a platform generally. So I have made an Instagram to go with this account, but YouTube will be the most active thing for me where I discuss books. But anyway, let's just get on into the video. I know you don't want to hear me rambling. Okay, so I was like, how are they going to get to know me on here? What's the best way? And I thought, you know what? Let's go through all the books that I gave 5 stars to in 2024. I read a bit of a mix of books from fantasy to romance to thrillers. They're like the main ones, but I even read the odd biography, things like that. But we are kicking it off with a romantasy in the first 5-star spot. Okay, so I'm going to do them in the order I read them because I don't want to do like an order of preference because these all got 5-star from me for a reason. And often my preferences change depending on my mood, like what genre I want to read, etc. So let's just kick it off in the order I read them. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros is first. I finished this just into 2024. I actually started at the end of 2023. It took a few days and I just happened to finish just in 2024, so it made that list. I adore this book. I honestly recommend it for those of you that haven't tried fantasy or not for a long time. I honestly recommend this as the way to get into it. Rebecca Yarros's writing is super accessible. I don't mean that it's like super easy, and she's very clever at writing. There's a lot of foreshadowing, etc., through the books, and they kind of link as the series go on. But what I mean is, it gets straight into the action, it draws you in, and there's nothing too difficult in the language she uses. So I just think this is a really good one if you haven't tried it. For those of you that do love fantasy, you've probably read this, but if you haven't, I still strongly recommend it. I don't want to say too much about the plot and like give away things, but long story short, it's set in a college, which is, I guess you could kind of call it like a magic college. But it's called Basgiath, and basically it trains people. And we follow Violet Sorrengail, who is been put in to train to be a dragon rider. Violet Sorrengail is quite a stereotypically like weak person, and you know maybe she doesn't necessarily suit the like stereotype of the person that would get in the Riders Quadrant. It's known for being deadly. People do die in this book, like, and I don't even mean through anything super bad. Like accidents can kill them. But yeah, basically, it's a super dangerous college. We find out she has this enemy that wants to kill her. It is an enemies to lovers story, just in case you didn't know. So it definitely has that trope in it. But yeah, we basically follow her time at Basgiath College along and see what is going on. It's really hard to say stuff without completely spoiling it. But honestly, if you like dragons, if you like drama, if you like a love story, if you like enemies to lovers, pick up this book. Which leads us swiftly into my second 5-star read, which is Iron Flame, which is the sequel to Fourth Wing. So I'm not going to say too much about that one because obviously, if you haven't read Fourth Wing, anything I would say about this would spoil it. But for me, perfect continuation of the story. I love both books so much. Both drew me in instantly, and I can't wait for the next part, which is out in like a month. The next one is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I know that Colleen Hoover is a little bit of a sort of Marmite, author where people seem to either love her or hate her. I like her books. I haven't read any that I dislike, but I think this one might be my favorite. I really liked Verity too, but I feel like this one and maybe Verity would be the only ones I would probably award 5 stars to. The reason I love this one so much is, for me, it was a really unique story. I personally haven't read any books with a similar storyline at all. I'm sure they are out there. I just haven't read them. But I don't want to give too much of the story away. But let me read a little bit of the back, but I'm only going to do some of it because I feel like it gives too much if I read all of it. It says, after serving 5 years in prison for a tragic mistake, Kenna Rowan returns to the town where all went wrong, hoping to reunite with her 4-year-old daughter. But the bridges Kenna burned are proving impossible to rebuild. Everyone in her daughter's life is determined to shut Kenna out, no matter how hard she works to prove herself. So yeah, basically, Kenna comes out of prison. She wants to reconnect with her daughter, and she finds a lot of resistance with people not wanting her to see her daughter. So that's kind of the general idea of the story. I don't want to say too much more. There's a bit of a romance element. If you're into your romance, like Colleen is sort of known for that. There is some romance in there, but it's definitely not like the sole focus of the book. And I think that's why I really like this. It's kind of like a family drama. I laughed and I cried. Like, this was such an emotional roller coaster of a book, but that just made me love it all the more. And the next book is All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. So I actually saw a video going around online talking about this book where the author was saying that some schools had banned this book and that she was really upset about it, and because she thinks that it really covers some sort of necessary topics. So to be honest, that piqued my interest, and that's why I bought it. If I'm honest, this isn't necessarily the sort of book that I'd probably instantly reach and pick up, but I ended up loving it, and I'm so glad I did. I will read you a little bit off the back. I don't think this one gives away too much because there's so much in this story that to give it away would be so difficult. This is what it says. Misbah is a dreamer and storyteller, newly married to Tufik, please excuse if I am not pronouncing this right, in an arranged match. After their young life is shaken by tragedy, they come to the United States and open the Clouds Rest Inn motel, hoping for a new start. And then jump forward in time. Saladin and Noor are more than best friends. They are family. Growing up as outcasts in the small desert town of Juniper, California, they understand each other the way no one else does, until the fight, which destroys their bond with the swift fury of a star exploding. There is a little bit more, but I do feel that sort of starts giving away the plot. But basically, they have to navigate a lot of different things. There are themes in this like alcoholism, drugs, death. There are some dark themes in this book, but the way they're explored is so, I don't know, emotional and also needed. I honestly feel like if teenagers were to read this book, young adults read this book, I feel like they always will learn something. I feel like this shows the harsh realities of some of the dark things that exist in the world, and for me, it was really eye-opening, and I think it's written brilliantly. So, yes, that's why it gets 5-star from me. I feel like this is super educational and beneficial for people to read. Okay, so my next 3 5-star reads are all from the same series, so let's talk about them together. But that is ACOTAR, A Court of Thorn and Roses. Obviously, the second book, A Court of Mist and Fury, and the third book, A Court of Wings and Ruin. I'm just going to hold the first one for the purposes of talking about the series. You may have noticed I have omitted the other 2 books that released, the novella and also the final book. The reason I did that was obviously originally the series was intended to be a trilogy, if you didn't know that. So this original trilogy. And for me, I was just so much more invested in it. I still loved the other 2 books, and especially, not the novella, but the other main one, I rated it a 4.75. But the reason it didn't make my 5-star cut is I was just so much more invested in the characters in the original trilogy, like how it followed them. I much preferred how the story played out. I think because it was intended to be a trilogy, these just flow so well. So while I did love the other book, I don't want to say too much in case you start reading the series and you don't want to spoiler at all of what the other book's about. But yeah, so that's why the first original trilogy all get 5-star from me. So this first book, which I'm going to talk about mainly so that I'm not giving the series away for those that haven't read it, I'm sure if you're into fantasy, you probably have. But I started reading this and it's very Beauty and the Beast influence. I would even say with a little bit of Hunger Games in here and even a little bit of Labyrinth, honestly, to me. That's how I would describe it. But ultimately, it is a fantasy with fae and magic, and it's really magical. I just loved it. A lot of people say this first one is really slow to get into. I didn't really find that. It was slower to get into than the next two because obviously I didn't know the characters yet. But I still found I got sucked in pretty quickly. I love Sarah J. Maas's writing. It's so clever. All the way the things link through the books, absolutely amazing. I love the world she creates. It's absolutely stunning. You know, I don't want to say too much, but I'll just read just the first little bit. When 19-year-old huntress Feyre kills a wolf in the woods, a terrifying creature arrives to demand retribution. Dragged to a treacherous, magical land she knows only from legends, Feyre discovers that her captor is not truly a beast, but one of the lethal immortal fairies who once ruled her world. That's as much as I'm going to read. But yes, if you like your magic and fairies and you haven't read this, please read this. It is so good. And there is a little bit of smut in there. I forgot to say that about Fourth Wing as well. There is a little bit of smut in there. So if you hate that, maybe those series aren't for you. But I think they're done like well in these books. They're not so in it all the time that it feels overwhelming, but they're in it a nice amount, you know? And the next book that made a 5-star on my list is another Rebecca Yarros book. So I really wanted to try, after reading Fourth Wing, one of her other books. She has many, and I still need to read more. But I picked up The Last Letter. I heard it was really sad. I sometimes like a good cry to a book, I'm not going to lie. So yes, I cried, let's say that. And I kind of feel like if a book can make you cry and make you feel that strongly, then really it does deserve a very, very high rating and probably usually a 5-star. The back is actually a letter from the book, so I'm not going to read that. But basically, a summary of the story is there is a guy who is in the military, and he has a friend in the military who's a little bit of a loner, and he sets him up as a pen pal with his sister. And this guy gets along with his friend's sister super, super well. And they seem to almost basically fall in love. They're supposed to be meeting, and then everything goes wrong, basically. And the story continues from there. There's a lot of twists and turns in this. The sadness might not always come from what you expect. And that's what I really want to say without giving anything away. But if you like a good, sad book that is a romance too, I would suggest reading this one. And next up is another fantasy book, which is When the Moon Hatched. As you can probably tell, this is quite a monster of a book, but I loved it. I've read a lot of people saying they couldn't get into this book, that they didn't finish it. I've read very mixed opinions on it, but personally, it's definitely one of the best fantasies I've read all year. I think the main male character to me is amazing. I love him. I mean, I love the others in the other books too, like in Acta and Fourth Wing for sure. I love them. Love the main male characters. But the one in this, there was just something so sweet about him. I love him too. In terms of smart, there is not much in this one. There is a little bit, so it is in here in case you don't like it. But it, you know, considering the size of the book, there really isn't that much in it at all. There is some very clever things going on in this book. What I will say is the prologue is very different to the rest of the book. And if you just read that, you might be like, whoa, this is hard to read. Because I will say the language here that Sarah A. Parker uses is definitely a little bit more complex than most other fantasies that I have read. So sometimes you do have to, you know, really let the words sink in. But I just think it's a magical book. Essentially, if you like dragons, etc., magic again, you're probably going to like this. I'll read a little bit from the back. So it says, as an assassin for rebellion group Fear Ath, Rave's job is to complete orders and never get caught. When a rival bounty hunter turns her world upside down, blood spills, hearts break, and Rave finds herself imprisoned by the Guild of Nobles, a group of powerful fae who turn her into a political statement. So this is mainly written as a dual perspective. and you have Rafe's perspective, who is the character that I just mentioned, but there is also the main male character, Khan, and this is what it says about him. Crushed by the loss of his great love, Khan Vega took the head of a king and donned his melted crown. Now on a tireless quest to quell the never-ebbing ache in his chest, a clue lures him into the capital's high-security prison, where he stumbles upon the imprisoned Rave. I'm not going to read anymore, but that is the book. Honestly, I can't not recommend this, but I will say if you struggle with your focus and you struggle with longer books, maybe it isn't for you, but I love it and I am so excited for the next one. Okay, next is a thriller creeping into my 5 stars. I've read some really good thrillers this year and a lot of them I have ranked 4.5 or higher, but this is the one that made it to 5 stars because it is one I couldn't put down, I kept thinking about, and also wasn't one that I necessarily would have immediately reached for. I've heard some really good things about Lisa Jewell, but I had never read any of her books before, even though I actually have a couple of them. I just hadn't got around to reading them. And then I joined a book club and they assigned this book. This is written from a few characters' perspectives, which honestly I often don't like. I feel like when it's more than a dual narrative, it can get very messy. But for me, I actually found I was really, really enjoying this. Like with most perspectives where it changes, there are some that I was enjoying more than others and bits that I wanted to read more than others. But overall, the way it was done, I think was so clever. It was such an interesting story. But long story short, a family end up taking in some other people into their house, and it almost becomes like a cult, and a lot of weird stuff happens, and you get to see from like the modern day perspective where some of these characters are adults, and then you go back in the past where they're all children again, and it's a really clever way of telling a story, which is honestly I'd almost call it a bit of a psychological thriller because of the fact that some of the characters are clearly very unstable, and I just think it makes for a really, really interesting story, and there's lots of twists and turns. I'm not going to say too much more, but if you like your thrillers and you like something that's going to make you think, read this. Okay, and on to my final 5-star book of 2024. My final one is A Song to Drown Rivers by Anne Liang. I adored this book. The way this is written is so stunning. I love the story. It's actually based on a real life legend. So it's the legend of Zishi. I think I'm saying it right. Please correct me if I'm not. But yeah, it's the legend of Zishi, which is an ancient Chinese legend. And it is based on that. I don't want to say too much, but basically a girl is really stunningly beautiful and the government basically enlists her help to infiltrate an enemy territory because of how pretty she is. And a lot goes on from there, and there's also a little bit of a like forbidden romance element. There's obviously a lot of like deception, and it's quite emotional really, and I just think the way it's written is stunning. And also look at this cover, not cover, I mean the spade edges, I mean, and the cover too. It's just a beautiful book. Yeah, honestly, I can't tell you how much I love this book. So again, this isn't necessarily a storyline that would necessarily make me pick it up if I just briefly heard about it, but I had seen this posted by quite a few different people, and it was in like a list. I can't remember if it was the Times or maybe the New York Post, somewhere posted a list of top books, and this was in it. And because I kept seeing its name crop up, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get it and I'm going to try it. And I actually got to pick my book club's pick that month. So this is what I chose. It is classed as historical fiction fantasy. I wouldn't say it's like super fantasy, but I guess because it's based on a legend, it kind of is. But it's not fantasy as in like dragons, that kind of fantasy. And I guess historical fiction because again, it's based on a legend. But yeah, I love this book and I can't recommend it more. Okay, that is all the books that I gave 5 stars to for 2024. You might be thinking some of your favorites are missing, and maybe I did read them. I have a lot of books that I have sat at around a 4.5, and they were also all amazing. But I just thought, to condense this video, we'd stick to what I rated 5 stars. So you could get to know me, see that I read different things. So, like, obviously, there are quite a few fantasies in here. This year, I've read a lot more fantasies because it's kind of been me getting back into that genre. When I was younger, I used to read a lot, like, The Hunger Games, obviously Twilight, Morganville Vampires, things like that. So I have just loved getting back into that genre because I feel like it's kind of gone viral, over the last year or two, and it's become super, super popular again. And it's really made me like branch out and go back to that fantasy genre. So I have been quite focused on that this year. So I probably have read more fantasies than other genres, hence there are more in here. But obviously, I've got my romances and my historical fiction and thrillers. So hopefully, you can see that I do like to read quite a mix of books. And I will post again with some more book content soon. Please, 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 if you love talking books and you like seeing recommendations, please, please, please subscribe to the channel. It will be really, really appreciated, especially because I've only just set this one up. But yeah, please let me know if you have any book recommendations. Like, what did you get that were 5 stars for you this year that you think I should read? Or maybe I have, but I can tell you that. But yeah, I will see you again real soon. Bye.